and what are the way forwards. As far as my comments with respect to the topic is concerned, I think the international community is facing a really crisis like no other since the founding of the United Nations just 75 years ago. And there is a very interesting similarity between the virus and the terrorism because both of them doesn't respect the national borders. And I think it is too early to fully assess the implication of COVID-19 on terrorism landscape. But we know that Islamic State in Iraq or Daesh or Al Qaeda and their region affiliates, as well as the neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other groups, other hate groups, seek to exploit divisions, local conflicts, governance failures, and grievances and advance their objectives. I firmly believe that there is a need to harness the power of multilateralism by addressing some of the key areas. And these key areas may include to keep up the momentum in the fight against terrorism. Second, may be the ensuring to have the right technology, tools, and concepts to stay ahead of terrorists. And third, maybe counterterrorism laws and security measures uh, cannot be an excuse to shrink our civil liberties or denial of the fundamental rights, and tackle the spread of the terrorism narratives through the pandemic sensitive holistic approaches, and further to strengthen the information sharing to learn from the experiences and good practices of others in the COVID-19 security landscape. As far as I think the Pakistan is concerned, I believe that Pakistan's actions to counter terrorism may further to be strengthened with respect to pre-investigation, investigations, prosecutions, and forensic evidences for terrorism-related cases. And obviously, this requires enhancing the skills and the knowledge of the law enforcement officials, prosecutors, and judges, and while improving the coordination between the provincial government, federal authorities, including National Counterterrorism Authority, as well as the intelligence agencies. So this what all about from my side, and I request Dr. Shabana Fayaz to give her talk on the subject. Dr. Saiba, please.
Thank you so much for giving an opportunity to be a part of this very excellent initiative and very inspiring initiative taken by Institute of Studies. Of course, the main motivators are Asif Noor and Farhat Asif, and of course the RIPA University as well. And I'm also pleased to know that there's a number of diplomats are present in the audience, and that is something that gives us an academia an outlet to interact with them and to engage in a dialogue, healthy dialogue on a nature of terrorism amid COVID. Well, as has been said by the preceding person or a colleague, nature of terrorism, the quick question is, has it changed in the COVID era, or what it was in the pre-COVID era, and how it is going to be affect the national or the global security in the times to come. So this is all three aspects of the same problem. But if for getting to know more deeper into this debate, I think first we have to know that what is the terrorism, how it has, the threat matrix has evolved from being a high degree factor in Pakistan's security debate to a relatively low degree impact factor in the late last 4 years or so, and again on the surge, again on the rise in the present era that we are seeing now amid COVID. So to begin with, I would like to say that the terrorism is what essentially means for today's debate is that we are focusing specifically from Pakistan's context, the terrorism generated by the non-state actors. We will not be focusing side by side. One can raise that why not state terrorism? Although the states have been engaged, like India has been accused of that, America has been accused of that, in many countries around the world, for their anti or the state terror prone actors around the regions and across their own country. But the matter what I would like to focus is that there are multiple explanations that what is the nature of terrorism by non-state actors in South Asia and in globally, and all this within their occurrence or their happenings during the COVID era. Now, to begin with, we have to understand that COVID-19 is not a one-time occurrence. It is a one of the major pandemic at the global scale that has hit after hundreds of years, 200 years or so to the present generation. So we are not living in a normal times. This is what I meant to say. We are living in a very testing times. It is a time where the nerves of the security managers are pushed to the maximum. This is not a traditional security threat, the COVID-19, that the security managers are fighting. Rather, it is a combination of traditional, non-traditional, and a multilateral threat that has spread across the nations. And we have seen some states going back to the more towards the nationalism, confining the populations within their borders, not allowing the people to move from one side or another. We have seen the suspension of the aircraft carriers. We have seen the suspension of the trade and movement of the people. So this is a whole scenario when we see that how the question is how the terrorists are looking at this. If I put myself in the shoes of the non-state actor, the political violent non-state actors who are either national in their character or are externally generated and motivated or are global in nature, I have to say that what has been their role in our part of the world, specifically I'm talking about the South Asia. Now, essentially, very interesting pointers have come out. The role or the behavior of the Afghan Taliban amid COVID threat in Afghanistan, where the Taliban allowed the distribution in the mask and the sprays and others in their influential areas. And that was something amazing for the other population or the part controlled by the Afghan civilian government. So that was not, so there was one generation was feeling that the COVID has really softened the attitude of the non-state actors, because as we all know, the Pakistan peace process underway, Talibans are no longer recognized, Afghan Talibans are no longer recognized as a major terrorist group that was initially designated by the US as one of those groups. It is a product of the peace process. Now, coming to what has been happening in case of South Asia and others, we have seen the states who were the states security people or the security managers, their threat scenario or understanding of threat scenario has become very widened. People of the state, population expects the state to save their healthy lifestyle. To engage, the question posing the threat is state capable of doing so, of delivering to each and every individual of the country a healthy lifestyle, a secure health conditions, and a secure employment? Obviously, it is not possible. It is not possible. It has proven to be not possible in US and advanced countries. So what do you expect in Pakistan? It is one of the developing countries. So this is something we have to understand. Now, Pakistan's views regarding on the counterterrorism has to be understood that it is not a one-day job. We have to understand before countering how Pakistan is countering the terrorism in the COVID era, we have to understand that terrorism, that Pakistan as a threat from non-state actors from within, non-state actors supported by our enemies from outside, and transnational networks who have been using and exploiting the Pakistani population for their goals inside the countries. All these three levels who have global connections and global agendas, how to deal with them, they are not a creation of 1 year. It is not that they were generated in 1 year prior to COVID. No, they have been here for more than decades and decades. There is whole history to it. So without going into the historical level, we have to understand that counterterrorism in this scenario is a generational enterprise. Since it is a generational enterprise, if I say, I have to make you understand that there is a geopolitical factors or explanation associated with the threat of terrorism in case of Pakistan and other parts of the world. Similarly, there is a religious underpinnings attached to it. And along with that, there are economic and social and developmental factors and cultural factors that are also associated with the actions by the non-state actors and that are adopting the violence as their means of conduct. Now, another key point before looking into the prisms of Pakistan terrorism profile, you have to understand that why the geopolitics I have said. In case of Pakistan, you have to look what has been happening in Afghanistan. This is very, very true. That what happens if peace in Afghanistan will translate to peace and stability in Pakistan. This is not my saying. This is something that has been illustrated and said time and again, both by the policymakers and policy thinkers alike. Similarly, we have seen in case of Pakistan, the very creation of Afghan Jihad that was in the wake of USSR occupation of Afghanistan, and this Afghan Jihad was Mujahideens were supported, conducted through Pakistan, supported financially and procured by US and Muslim world to defeat the USSR. This fallback, the result of this Afghan Jihad was, one, we had a lot of refugees. Second, we had also the beginning of Kalashnikov culture within our country. And since this was unchecked, and plus there was mushrooming of madrasas of the supported by external actors on the one and by the Saudis and Irans, and the beginning of the also the sectarian strifes within the country on behalf of these different sects of Islam. Similarly, the eras following that, you also see the Kashmir insurgency in the Indian occupied Kashmir. This was also regarded as one of the key motivator factors of the groups operating from this part to the other part. Some says it is the Pakistani government supported groups, violent groups, religious groups in Kashmir. Some say it is the communally adjacent group that have moved into the Indian part of the Kashmir. Well, the debate remain unresolved, but I think as an analyst, one we have to see is that people of the Kashmir are suffering, and this is something that needs to be registered, and they have suffered at the hands of terrorist act by the state and non-state actors in the IOK, that is Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, external environment in Pakistan's security and insecurity landscape is also very, very important when we speak of the terrorism threat matrix in the country. Now, who are interested in spoiling Pakistan? I'm not supporting or advocating or saying that it is only India or otherwise. I think it is more than India. There are our neighboring states. India is obviously number one, but so are other neighboring states as well, specifically the instability within Afghanistan, and similarly the different perspectives or the clashes of cross-border movement across Iran as well. So in other words, all this has germinated in creating, especially before 9/11, Afghanistan as a safe haven of the transnational groups, national groups, that especially Al-Qaeda, and that resulted, and that Al-Qaeda had linkages to Pakistani fighters as well, and so as to the other Muslim parts of the world, Libya, Syria, and so on and so forth. So similarly, in that scenario, the question is, then another point where you have to remember before going to 9/11 is that the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, the first Taliban regime, although it was recognized by the Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and UAE, but the fact is that the Taliban and Pakistan government had differences on the presence of Pakistani outlawed sectarian elements sitting and being given shelter in Afghanistan. So there were tensions within that. Now, in another aspect in case of Pakistan is we have a difficult situation in Balochistan, and that the Balochis who are not satisfied with the status quo, they have challenged the writ of the state and often exploited by the external actors to be used against the Pakistani population. Now, the key question arises is that how has Pakistan in this scenario has adopted or has responded in the COVID era? Initially, it is very interesting to see that Pakistan momentum picked up in June and July. And these terror attacks, specifically in Quetta, in Parachanar, and in parts of Balochistan, and specifically in Karachi, attack on the Karachi Stock Exchange was one of the very critical ones. All these were claimed by the non-state actors and who were either related with the Taliban's or the ISKP, that is Islamic Movement, and its chapter K in this part of the world. And interestingly, in case of other stock exchange actors, there were ethnicity element involved in it. The Balochis, the group, disgruntled group, also admitted that they are part of this, exchange of attack, and that was something very, very heartening to know. And then when the evidence emerged, according to Pakistan's reports, it was that the detonation material that they were using and otherwise was from the Indian sources. So this is something to be noted. Now, another alarming factor in Pakistan for Pakistan in the COVID era is that there is an amalgamation of three banned terrorist groups who are indigenous in nature in Pakistan. Number one is, and they have recently joined and hands in Paktika, that is the province, and resolved to launch terrorist attacks in Pakistan. Number one main chapter is the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan that was banned by Pakistan in 2008. Number two is Jamaatul-Ahrar, and this is again banned in 2016. And number third is Hizbul Ahrar, banned in 2019. Now, what is their main agenda? According to the reported news items, they want to fight Pakistan government and people against their un-Islamic policies and unlawful constitutional system which they see as a threat to their Islamic vision of governance. So this is their state. Now, another important factor is that there is a surge on online and offline radicalization trends in Pakistan. And I think this is not only confined to Pakistan, this is happening all over the world, where the terrorists in the garb of the social gatherings and using the Zoom, while we are using it for the intellectual exchange, the other people are also using it under the cover of different ideologies. So the social media is a platform where this is seen as a factor in germinating more anti-state activities by the politically violent groups. So this is something another. Another important involvement in factor in case of COVID era is there is an identifiable supply chains of weaponry, indoctrination, financing from outside actors in case of Pakistan. And these outside actors, indoctrination can take various forms. It can start from the peace building, and then it will aggravate in some cases to the Islamic way of peace building, where according to these particular groups, they use a particular notions, straight jacket notions, where they don't advocate dialogue with other sectors of the Muslim community. So this is very, very dangerous. That needs to be checked. Of course, this all comes under the radar of cyber security, and this is widely checked by cybersecurity elements within Pakistan governments. But I think it is a long drawn shift, and we need to focus more on that. I don't want to take much time of you people. I would like to hear more interesting questions. Well, on conclusions, I will highlight three important points. Number one, Pakistan's security threat matrix has become more complicated. COVID-19 has shown state inability to deliver on all ends. The question I raise is, can a strong military state, how can we make our military might translate into the social development model or a humanist security, inclusive security approach? This is one of the biggest challenge for Pakistan today, and not only for Pakistan today, it is the same challenges for US. The global power of the world has not been able to provide health facilities to its very citizens. So this is an open question that I think I will raise here. Secondly, we need to have a dialogue across the board. Dialogue across the board within the country, with our neighbors, across the region, and moving beyond to the across the multiple regions and building up to the global regions. We need to have more brainstorming on that. We have to come up as the policy thinkers from us versus them debate. Because the more we say us, we are right and you are wrong, we will not solve the problem of COVID-19 and the non-state actor violence or the prone non-state actor terror output that threatens the peace within our country or countries alike. So this is very important. Thirdly, we need to admit that the terrorism is essentially an externally sponsored phenomena. This understanding that it is not our doings. What is happening in case of Pakistan or in Sudan or in Kenya or in Somalia or so and so forth or China, it is not our doing. It is somebody else doing. I think that mindset needs to be changed. Unless we are fixated with this approach, we will not be able to revisit our counterterrorism strategy that is flexible and inclusive enough to look into the sustainable counter-terror moves using the kinetic and non-kinetic means of business. And then lastly, we have to understand that there exist the vulnerabilities and gaps within our societies. It is not only specific to Pakistan, it applies to across the region, across the world. And unless that gaps are filled, they will be exploited by the external actors or the internal actors who are not satisfied with a particular brand of governance within the system. Last is, I would say that the counterterrorism requires a healthy mix of state and society partnership. The very thing that we are having this exchange of ideas is by one of the Institute of Peace Studies that is a civil society actor, civil society think tank working with another academia outfit that is an university. So this is a healthy exchange. Unless we say that it is only one sector has to do the counterterrorism thing, it will not result in that. And countering terrorism does not mean you use the kinetic operations only. It means the non-kinetic mindset. If you change the mindset, you change the future outlook. I think this here I will stop here, and I will really look forward to your questions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your very comprehensive input on a very significant topic. And today, I hope there will be very good participation from our participants. Now, Mr. Abdullah Saeed want to ask some question from respectful ma'am. Uh, Mr. Muhammad Abdullah, you can ask.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you, Asif Saab, and thank you, Dr. Saiba, for taking out time to be with us today. It has been a great learning experience from all the information that you have shared with us. Ma'am, it's just a small question or a comment you can say that counterterrorism and COVID-19, the best example that I could find in recent times for the international counterterrorism cooperation purposes was this virtual counterterrorism week, which was organized by the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. It was a virtual counterterrorism week. It started from 3rd of July and it ended on 10th July. And over 134 member states, they participated in it. Now, I'm not sure if Pakistan was a party to it, but I think we need to utilize all these platforms on a multilateral level to raise our voice and share all the threats that we face so that the rest of the world could be aware of the difficulties that we are facing and could help us actually fight the scenario that we are in. Thank you, ma'am.
Gee, very excellent point you have raised. Well, I was unaware of this the UN Virtual City Week. I think I had missed that. If you look into the conversations that out of this week, and the UN is an excellent body, and
Ma'am, we cannot hear you actually. Could you kindly repeat that? Hello?
International body, but the unfortunate part is that it has excellent resolutions. Say, for example, on Kashmir and others, they remain not, deliverable. This is something very, very important one has to understand. I hope I'm clear enough.
No, no, we
की
have.
आवाज आ रही है?
Yes, ma'am. You are
Ma'am,
audible. Yes, you are audible, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am,
thank you, ma'am.
no, ma'am. Rosina want to ask something concerning topic. Ma'am, Zina, please introduce yourself first of all, then ask your question. Ma'am Rosina, please unmute yourself. Ma'am Rosina, please unmute yourself.
Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yeah. No, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. I am Rosina. I am entrepreneur and also a secretary in IWCCI. My question is, what are the challenges to implement anti-money laundering and terrorism financing in context with COVID-19?
Yes, this is very, very important and key question that you have raised, that what is the challenges to financial counter CT measures that are needed, especially the FATF related question in case of Pakistan. First, it is very difficult to, it has been, although the Pakistan has passed the legal laws, both by the, approved by the both houses of the parliament, but the fact is that, and banking system has become more stringent. The looking into the funding generations and others has been very strict. But since still there is a lot needs to be done on the groundwork, and I think our intent of the state is very clear. This government and even the previous ones, they are very clear. We don't want to be a state that is a conduit of funds to other international terrorist organizations. And this is specifically related to ISIS and also to Al Qaeda. Similarly, for the homegrown terrorist organizations like TTP and others, it is very, very difficult really to close all the channels of financial transactions or procurement that goes through that. For instance, in case of TTP, they have been associated with the groups that collect the hides of the animals that we sacrifice on Eid, and then they operate for zakat as well and others. So Pakistan government has closed down collection of hide by very effective social media campaign and the television campaign, to that. This time this target was achieved. But there is a lot needs to be done there. Then there are personal donations given by the people. And on top of it, they have even opened, when I go through the era, they not only TTP and others extremist outfits, even Al Qaeda has been doing it, and also ISIS. They are even working. They undercover the pharmacy business. They're selling the medicines, and you don't know where the money is coming from and where it is going. So it is very, very difficult there, because they have penetrated the business and financial structures of the state. And this is not only within Pakistan. Believe me, it is all countries who are stricken by the terrorist threat. And it is even within the US, the underground web of dark financial transactions, that takes place. And then in case of South Asia, there's also a system of hundi, that is the money transactions through the people, not through the banks. So if I need something, I will give you 5 lakhs here and you will give 5 lakhs to other party in the third country. So in case, and then narcotics is another thing. In case of Afghan Taliban, the Pakistan Taliban and those who are operating undercover, Al Qaeda and others, they are also in hand with the criminal elements, hostage taking, and similarly with others. So it is a very, very delicate task, and I think Pakistan is in a very tight situation, because we are placed on a grey list, and there is always a danger. We don't want to be pushed back into the blacklist. So that is very thing. Although there are whole political debate that how FATF is used as a pressure tool to extract maximum from Pakistan government. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
No request to Hiba Yasir. Please unmute yourself and introduce yourself before asking the question, please.
Hello. Thank you, madam, for this great
May I know
program.
your name, please?
Hiba Yasser.
Hiba Yasser.
Yeah, I'm
Which
an
country are
Egyptian
you from?
Egypt. I'm an Egyptian diplomat, and I'm staying in Islamabad. So my
Great.
question, thank you. So my question, madam, is in your opinion, what is the influence of the measures taken by some states in response of the COVID-19, such as the relocation of the armed forces from one place to help in fighting the pandemic? Also, I mean, the limits put on the free of movement and free of information on creating an sort of an adequate environment to, I mean, of possible to the illicit activity I mean, like an adequate environment to illicit activities in general and to terrorist activities especially.
Yes, very, very important question you have raised, Hiba. Well, to begin with, I say that, the usage of armed forces or the military infrastructure in fighting COVID-19. This is something not only Pakistan has done, even the US has done so. Because in most of the state-centric states, security-driven states, traditionally and all across the world, we still believe in the traditional security notions of security, where the state employs and has a maximum state structure. And in case of Pakistan, interestingly, we have seen the military role in all earlier pandemics as well. Climatic disaster, whether it is floods, whether it is earthquakes, whether it is, smoke related issues, whether it is pollution efforts, whether it is generation of electricity bills. This is where not something, I think it is commendable the military has done the job, but at the same time, it raises a very, very important question. Why only military? And this is something this developing states like Pakistan, Egypt, and other parts of the world is that there is a gap. We need to invest in all sectors of the state, whether it is political, civil, bureaucratic, and others. So all go together in a teamwork. This is something that needs to be done. At the moment, I think the military is the only cohesive institution that we have in Pakistan. Of course, we are politically stable and also economically, driven country, but still we need to develop our state and society relationship to an extent where the people themselves become the engine of change. So this is something very important. And then you say the transfer of movement from one part of the country to the other and from across the borders. In case of Pakistan, I did another presentation. I'm writing a paper on that as well. That is the coming of foreign returnees worker to Pakistan, how they are being forced or impacted by COVID-19. This is very interesting because it is also found that the flights who are coming from UAE, Saudi Arabia, and others, those who were, they landed, the most 60% of them were infected with COVID. So the big question rises, why the country of their, origin, why is it there was something lacking by our PIA that didn't took their COVID test, or also by the immigration authorities of the country where they are flying from, that they didn't register them as COVID patients. And when they came here, they were put in the quarantine, and then the quarantine were not of good standard. They moved to their areas, and then they became spreaders of the this COVID. So this is also something, I think the COVID-19 has really exposed the vulnerabilities in the good governance model that we thought of is the best model to generate in Pakistan or otherwise. Thank you so much. I hope I have answered your question.
Ji ma'am, one of our fellow members who have a question, he's Muhammad Siraj Khan. He wrote, does the pandemic implications for the defense and strategic priorities for Pakistan and other countries in the region?
Siraj?
Assalamualaikum, madam.
Yes, yes. Muhammad
Assalamualaikum, madam.
Siraj?
Muhammad
Yes,
Siraj
ma'am.
Khan,
Can you hear me? Okay.
you are audible. Please go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much, Kashif Saab. And Madam, it's an honor for me to attend your presentation. It's been really informative. What is very good to know is that you're writing a paper on Pakistanis returning from the Gulf region after the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm also based in Saudi Arabia.
Oh,
And
great.
yes, sorry.
Very good to know.
Okay, thank you very much. Um, I'm involved at in educational work here. I was also attending the same presentation with the IISS, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, based in London with offices in Singapore, Bahrain, DC. I'm an active member of the IISS also. So I was just thinking that they were discussing about different countries, that how it is affected. So in that context, I just have the same question: that does the pandemic have any implications for the defense and strategic priorities for Pakistan and other countries in the region? Because unfortunately, the hostilities do not, stop. The COVID came, there were no boundaries, but still there are problems, like between India and Pakistan and between Pakistan and other countries. So I would please request you to comment about it if the pandemic has any implication for the strategic priorities for Pakistan and other countries in the region. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you so much, Mohammed Siraj Khan Saab from Saudi Arabia. Obviously, I would like to be in touch with you to know more about what is happening from Saudi's ground. The question you have raised is that has anything changed for the strategic priorities of Pakistan? I will also add to India as well. Short answer is no. We are still in the same mode of historical or the traditional hostility that we have been at. Although initially there has been an issue of health diplomacy being originated from India through the SAARC chapter, and then Pakistan also gave an idea of ministerial conference, and then there was a ministerial conference as well. As usual, the best resolutions came out that we will do this and that, but unfortunately, because there is such a strong firewall between India and Pakistan, it is not the COVID-19 is a pandemic for the whole world, but it is not something that is altering the strategic mindset specifically by India on this side. Pakistan raised the point in one of the meetings that India has to look into the effects of COVID-19 in the IOK and the hostilities and the curfew on the Kashmiris who are facing their problem day by day. India regarded it, ridiculed it, that Pakistan has nothing better to do, so it is raising that agenda. Then again, on another part, the Pakistan Prime Minister suggested that Pakistan, regarding the disbursement of financial money to the rewards to the affectees, that we can cooperate in that matter. The Indian diplomacy said that Pakistan is a beggar. I'm quoting the words. They cannot teach us anything. So if I'm giving you a Pakistan picture, you can give me an Indian picture, it will be the same. So the question is that we are still in the hostility trap. And unfortunately for Pakistan, who is, although a nuclear state, is defense, but economically, we are not at the same parity with India. So unless we are strong economically, I don't think so that we will be in a position to get India or to make India come to terms or to a diplomatic table beyond Pakistan. So this is something we have to invest in the human development of our country, and we also need the support of international community. International community, as usual, will support the one who is in power. Unfortunately, this is a very hard fact, but this is a whole thing of realism that happens in international relations. Thank you so much.
No, Mr. Abdurrahman, please proceed. It's your turn.
Thank you very much, madam.
Assalamu alaikum, Madam Dr. Shabana. I'm Abdurrahman from Kenya High Commission. Thank you for your wonderful lecture. My question is, as you have rightly put it, Corona has really impacted very much on economic front, especially all over the world. millions of and as we've seen even from local reports, there are increases in petty crimes, especially like in cities like Karachi. You have reported of many people who have come back from the Middle East countries who have lost their jobs because of Corona. And as we know, terrorism normally takes opportunity among the vulnerable group of the community to recruit its members. Do you think the chances that with the loss of jobs and the level of poverty going down due to Corona, the terror groups will have an opportunity to recruit from these vulnerable groups, and maybe you can see, we may see more people being recruited and incidents of terror going up? Thank you.
Yes, very, very vital question, Mr. Abdul Rahman from a Kenyan diplomat. Yes, I think the Corona has really widened the disparity between the have and have-nots. State has delivered in case of Pakistan to the maximum ability, but is it possible to have a COVID test of whole of the population? No, it is not possible financially and also logistically. This is something. Now, is it possible to feed all the middle class people or the low middle class who have come back, lost the jobs, and who have returned from outside? Obviously, no. So we want to be a welfare state, but we are not a welfare state. Let's admit it. We are a struggling economy. So now in this scenario, the frustrations of the people are rising. They're blaming. Yesterday, I was looking at the debate on Imran Khan's 2 years tenure. And the biggest achievement, the people don't count what is the accountability is going through and the achievements that have come. They say, look at tomatoes have become more expensive. Wheat has become more expensive. Electricity is expensive. So unfortunately, we are a nation who don't have patience. Although we want overnight results. And if this mindset is cashed by the non-state actors who profess political violence against the state or your own, both and indoctrinate them through different means and use them as their medium of instructions and achieve their ends. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, I have a very brief question. I would like to get your input on that. What are the most effective recruitment channels of these non-state actors, specifically in Pakistan, and how they are successful and how they were successful in building their narrative across the Pakistan?
Yes, recruitment channels of non-state actors. It is obvious, it is the people say it is only the seminaries or madrasas. If you go deeper into the research, as I've spent quite a lot of time on researching on these topics, it is more than that. It can begin from the family, within the family. The recruiters, you're some uncle who is involved with some, other donor organizations. They might be the agent working undercover. So it may be because of certain business interest. So it is not only that, that they are only, or even the private schools, high elite schools. We have in Pakistan the cases where people from detonate, about to detonate. This is very important. So channels.
I think due to some internet issues, ma'am has left. Let me add him again. Ma'am Shabana is rejoining within 1 or 2 minutes. Yes, please, you can ask, Sai sir, you can ask question again. Uh, Welcome, ma'am. Welcome back. Ma'am, please unmute yourself, ma'am. Yes, please.
Ji, please.
Mr. Sirajul Haq, do you have another question, ma'am? If you
Okay.
yes, Siraj sir, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Kashif, for this opportunity again. Okay, first of all, ma'am, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to get you in touch with regards to the issue of the Pakistanis returning from the Gulf region. So at least I'm not the one this time. I would be really very much interested in focusing on doing some research on this topic. Currently, my research areas are also the Middle East. Anyway, so it was also great that I was in Pakistan last year and I visited the
Ji,
great
please.
university, Terrorism University. Can you hear me, man? Can
Yes,
you hear me?
please.
Okay.
Ji,
Uh,
Bilkul. Bilkul.
yeah, I just wanted to find out, like when the Afghan conflict started, like last time we had Mr. Zamir Akram Saab, and we were discussing about the Geneva Accords, which was signed in 1988, and nobody even talks about it. In my opinion, the terrorism problem probably started after that. What happened was that when the Geneva Accords was signed by George Shultz, the U.S. Secretary of State, Abdul Wakil, the Afghan Foreign Minister, and I think Mr. Edward Shevardnadze, the then Soviet Foreign Minister, and I think Mr. Zain Nourani signed it. But what happened was, what did Afghanistan, what did our Afghan brothers and Pakistanis, what did they get? What they got was the law and order problem, and then the terrorism started, and then this went on for a long time, and then it's still going on. And then Pakistan, and then recently, sorry, after 9/11, Pakistan joined the international coalition against what was described as the war against terrorism, and then they will fight for to remove terrorism is still going on. So what I wanted to find out is, it's not with regards to the COVID-19, but it's just the terrorism context. What would you like to give, what would you like to say about this problem, the menace of terrorism? How long should this continue? What negotiations should be done to really end this problem for Afghan and Pakistani people? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You have raised a very interesting question. Uh, Siraj sir, I think you have to understand that terrorism and counterterrorism is not only one man's job. So it requires a whole teamwork, and this teamwork can either be at the national level, it can be regional level or bilateral level or international. So it is easier to have a team at the national level, but it is hard to do so at bilateral and regional level, and linking it to the international parameters. What happened in the Geneva Accords and afterwards was everything was resolved well on table. But coming to Taliban coming into war and the civil war that followed in Afghanistan, outsiders were not interested other than Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, and so they were the major like US and others, they were not interested in having a lasting peace in Afghanistan. So they were comfortable enough that these terrorism and non-state actors, this is only the, or the civil wars, this is only happening in the third world countries. So this will not impact us. So why bother about these wars, And even there were jokes around that for Afghanis, it is a daily business. We are go out for earning and the Afghanis go out for fight. So it is there in nature. So with this mindset, the Afghanistan project, the stability project, unfortunately became a failure. And it will again become a failure if this time again, the peace agreement that Pakistan is also part of is not registered well on ground. Because even having the good agreements, the question is who is to implement. It is not the paper will implement itself. It is that it requires the commitment of the actors on ground. So this is very important. Similarly, if you look into the case of India and Pakistan, there has been excellent agreements. The paper I did earlier, one paper on JATM, Joint Anti-Terror Mechanism between India and Pakistan. If you read that, believe me, there should not be any problem between the two countries. But the fact is, has it really registered? Has it really been filtered down on the ground? The question, the big answer is no. So we need commitment by the people, policymaker on the grounds and the institutors to, stabilize the situation and interest in that. So I will stop there, please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I have a very simple question and very brief. Ma'am, as initially there were conventional weapons being used in different sort of wars, and after that there were chemical weapons and some sort of atomic weapons used by different nations against each other, or they were being used as a threat for the other nations. So do you think, is there any possibility of a usage of these viruses against each other as an alternative of these conventional and atomic weapons?
I didn't get it. You say conventional weapons and then tactical weapons. So what is the third category you are mentioning?
Atomic weapons, just like.
Atomic weapons.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. I think Pakistan, from Pakistan perspective, we believe in nuclear deterrence. And that is by being equipped with the nuclear weapons is strong enough to equip you, to deter your enemy for launching a massive attack against you. So this is the deterrence impact. And India also supposed to be believing in that. But India's unfortunately pursuit of hot pursuit operations and others operation, if it goes lethal, obviously then Pakistan will not have any options but to go for the last option. And here the role of international community is very important, that how long they are going to let Pakistan, even if India, like they have gone for the surgical strikes inside Pakistan and some were repulsed by Pakistan as well. But how long the Pakistan will be able to keep the strategic patience? So this is very important. So ultimately, it is, I think, it is the war of the wits. It is the war of the minds, and it is now we are entering into a new age, rather has entered India and Pakistan, where you have the artificial intelligence and all hybrid warfare. So hybrid warfare is basically a combination of all aspects of warfare that is soft and hard to achieve your objectives. So I think this is the domain that is going to have a major impact on India-Pakistan equation.
Is there any question from my fellows, group fellows? Yes, Mr. Salihu, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your elaborate lecture. My name is Yakubu Salu, Nigeria High Commission here in Islamabad. I want to find out this notion going a kind of rumor since the inception of COVID-19. The notion is it concerns the issue of politics being involved in the COVID-19. Right from the World Health Organization, the US do not agree on some certain submission of the World Health Organization. And other countries as well, including Pakistan and even my country, Nigeria, and other African countries, we have this notion that the total COVID issue has been politicized. There are, not. So what is the true state of that notion, please?
Well, you have raised a very intricate question and a complex question. It involves on the one hand that who is politicizing whom. So is the threat being politicized for its advantage by a particular country, or is it the country or is it the other way around? So in case of, the WHO, its whole role was being questioned by the United Nations, as a UN agency, by the USA, and where it curtailed its funding. And then why? Because they say the WHO didn't do their job earlier, and they didn't warn the whole international community that the China has COVID-19 symptoms. So this is something where, and then it became so, and then you see the whole debate and South side of China, obviously, and US was left alone. Question is an opportunity and is a failure game. COVID-19 can become an opportunity of multilateralism, of diplomacy, of intentional vehicle of digital diplomacy, or all these factors are very positive. Like I'm learning from you, you may be learning from me. So this is a perfect example of a digital engagement or a digital diplomacy. So but the major is that unless the mindset of the policy makers, especially the big ones, they change, whether the US will continue to be in trap of being afraid of China's rise. This is one thing. Or whether it will be willing to learn from Chinese example how to combat the COVID on a successful ways. So this is a multi-billion-dollar question that one needs to answer. And rather the COVID-19 again is used by the leaders for their own benefit in the countries of their domain. Sometimes the leaders, distributing the rations or distributing the goodies to the people, they say it is our achievement. The fact is it is not your achievement. It is the right of the people and you are delivering them what it is. So in fact, they're demeaning by taking the photos, of giving the donations and, using it for their political purpose. So there is a lot of politics that wraps around the COVID-19.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any question left? I think we have very wonderful session today, and we are truly grateful to Ma'am Shabana Fiaz for this very enriching and knowledge empowering session, specifically when she ma'am very categorically talked about the terrorism, its perpetrators and its contemporary developments, and specifically the counter-terrorism policies adopted by different nations, specifically Pakistan. So we will be inshallah have another session. We will request Ma'am Shabana for another session. And we will be having a very wonderful session again, inshallah. Thank you, ma'am, for your kind time and consideration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kashif, and all the participants. I think I have explained the topic well, and I will request you to note down my email. It is shabanafayaz@gmail.com, shabanafayaz@gmail.com. Just feel free to drop me an email if you need any further information on the subject. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.